Okay, so, okay. No. Okay. Um, when we first moved in, okay, the first few months we were living there, some shit went down with my brother and my grandmother. And it really did uh, keep a cloud over our happiness for me, anyway. And this is where, like, I'm going to have to elaborate more on it later because I'm trying to tell this one story now. My brother was having a hard time. My brother was filing for bankruptcy. That means he was losing his house and his car. And when you're filing for bankruptcy, there are certain aspects you have to. Okay, so my brother's trying to file for bankruptcy, and he had this portfolio that had like $200,000 in it. It was something that my great grandmother started for both of us. She started these accounts for us when we were born, and it turned into this thing where on paper it looked like my brother had all this money, so why the fuck is he trying to file for bankruptcy? Okay. Um, my brother didn't have access to this because it wasn't his. That's what my grandmother said, and I believed her. My ex boyfriend tried to pull me aside several times and say, uh, okay, we came to a point where my grandmother, okay, Cody couldn't do what he had to do while this existed, right? So the solution was for him to sign this account back over to my grandma or over to my grandmother, right? And she would pay any money he owed in taxes because we didn't. I have so much. Okay. All right. So my ex-boyfriend is like, Amber, I wouldn't sign that if I were him. I looked up this. I read up on it. These started out as UG or UTMA accounts. And he's like, he shouldn't sign this. If I was him, I wouldn't do it. Please, I read this. So I just want to be fair. To his credit, my ex-boyfriend really, 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 really tried to warn me, to warn my brother, right? But my grandmother said it wasn't his, so it wasn't his. And my ex is the smartest human being I've ever personally known. But that just shows you the pull my grandmother had over me. I wasn't hearing it. Whatever he had to say, it was inconsequential. It didn't fucking matter. My grandmother said it wasn't his, so it wasn't, It wasn't. Cody's like, I don't really understand the wording. I don't know what I'm signing. And she's like, don't be a greedy pig. It was never your money, she said. We set aside a little money for you to be able to go to school one day, but then I paid for your school out of my own pocket. So you're just trying to not miss out on a buck. Don't be a greedy pig. And then it got really ugly. At one point, she said something about his kid not being able to fit through a kitchen door because she was becoming so portly. And to my brother's credit, my brother remained pretty fucking calm. That's what I mean. It got ugly. Like, anyway, right? My brother had two small children. And it was hard because it's like, I'm getting this house. She's doing this wonderful, generous thing. And my brother's losing his house at the exact same time. My boyfriend tried to warn me. I didn't listen to him. I really was, whatever my grandmother said goes, you know? So my brother signs this over, but I mean, it just, there were so many times where I would go to my boyfriend and I'm like, what the fuck? Why won't she help him? Why won't she help my brother? Why? Like, why is she letting him suffer like this? Like, my brother hadn't done anything. You know, they weren't close. He hung up the phone on her one time, but it was because she had said something about his wife had looked like white trash with her roots showing the way they were shown. It was just, of course he hung up. He didn't say, fuck you. He didn't call her a bitch. He just hung up the phone. She always says that he reminds her so much of her first husband, and is that really his fault? No, it's not. It was just hard. It was really, really, really hard. My boyfriend was like, just hang in there. If we hang in there, and as long as we don't fuck this up for ourselves, we will be in better positions to help your brother later in the future, was his logic. And that was my motivating force for a long time. When things got really difficult with my grandmother, when it was just like, it felt so hopeless, when it was like, oh my God, these problems that are wrong with the house are never going to get done because she keeps pissing everybody off. I mean, the guy almost didn't sell the place to us. He came up to my job and I'm so glad he did, because he was ready to throw up his hands. He was like, he did call my grandmother a bitch, you know? He was like, that bitch, and I understood it. I understood where he was coming from, because she's difficult. So yeah, that guy almost didn't even sell us the place because he's like, I can't, oh my God, that woman. But it was my grandmother, and I understood, but I still felt like she was just difficult. She's just from a different time. She sees things differently because she's from a different time, and she's a difficult woman, but her heart's in the right place. You know, that's where I stood on the matter. But it was really a big struggle for me to understand how my brother could be losing his house with 2 small children, and I just didn't understand why she wouldn't help him, you know. But my boyfriend was like, and it was smart. It made sense. He's like, you know, we go along with this. We make your grandmother happy, and we just try to smooth things out as much as possible. We will be able to help your brother later, right? So please understand that was always like hanging above my head during the whole entirety, right? That was from the beginning, right? But then, yeah, it got to be, frankly, it just got to be too much. All of the people that wouldn't show up again, and she says, you're never available. And it's like, are you kidding me? I was available. They wouldn't show back up. They wouldn't come back over. I had no say-so, no authority whatsoever, because they always had to then talk to her because she was in charge of the payment, you know? She wanted everything to be done as cheap as possible with the best quality work, and that's really not easy to find, and it's not fair to people that are masters at their vocation for them to have to give you, like, you're paying for their skill, you know? It's insulting to them. And she would be like, you know, I love doing things. Now, I suck at doing things, but I love watching YouTube videos on how to do it your fucking self. The problem is I still can't do it myself. I watch these videos until I can't watch them anymore, and I fixed a toilet one time, and I probably strutted around for fucking 5 years afterwards. Like, I fixed a toilet one time, ah ha ha ha. Like, if I succeeded in something, it was a big deal. But the point is, I was all about trying to do it yourself, and she would encourage that. But I think she was probably like, why the fuck can't you figure it out? I don't know. I just can't, I guess. But then she kind of got like, well, what about your boyfriend? Well, I mean, first of all, he's not like that. He was pretty fast to admit he'll hold a drink and he'll delegate. and I'll build the things that we get from IKEA, or I'll try to do it myself. And he's like, okay, well, I'll call the repair guy. He, like, and I don't hold that against him, but she kind of did. And then so that became a problem. It was kind of like, well, why won't he do this? Well, he doesn't want to, or it's not his niche, fuck, I don't know. Like, why don't you tell him? I'm not going to tell him anything. Like, that's not our dynamic. Okay. Then it was like, then she's like, why am I the only one spending money? Why isn't he paying for anything? Okay, well, because when we got this place, I expressed my concerns with all of the work it needed, and you said, don't even worry, I've got plans. You said that. Like, you had plans. You said money is not an option. What the fuck do you mean? Why isn't he spending? Like, he was very generous with his friends, very generous with his family. It wasn't, she wanted me to get into his bank account and see where he was spending his money, and I was like, no. I was spying on him enough as is for my own reasons, right? That I wasn't, but that wasn't the kind of relationship I was trying to have anyway, right? I didn't want to boss him around. That's not a relationship that's healthy. One person's not bossing the other person, right? But she was, I just don't know how to convey how much she wanted me to get him to do all of the sudden, where it was like, but that was never, we were both concerned at first with how much, but she just kept saying, don't worry about it. I have plans. She said I deserved it. She said I was her little turtle dove. She used to call me that. She said I was a good person, and she said she liked the kind of person I was. She said she worried about me being so naive sometimes, but she said that I had a good heart. She said that I deserved it. Minutes. Okay. So yeah, just all of it. It's so hard to. Oh, I'm complaining because I got a free house. I know how it sounds. And I just don't know how to convey what all went down that made me so confident looking you dead in the eye and saying it was not a free house. Mm-mm. And I don't know, and even if it did contribute, the stress of it, even if the stress of it did contribute to the changes that were happening all of a sudden in my ex-boyfriend, I'm not saying that justifies it, but we did have a lot of extra stress. And one thing my grandmother had said to me is, they say it's hugely stressful. They say moving in, buying a home, no matter the circumstances around it, it can be very stressful for a couple, right? And I just thought, like, I didn't, but even she said that, and I'll be damned, it was stressful, right? And then, yeah, things relatively out of nowhere got scary with my ex-boyfriend, and when I talked to her and I talked to my stepmom. Those were the people I talked to. They knew what was going on. I didn't tell my dad for obvious reasons. Come on. But my stepmom or my grandmother used to say, "Don't be so difficult. You're really difficult, Amber. You got to make him happy. You can't afford to live there on your own." He never like punched me in the face, But when things would happen, I told her, and she was just like, you know, yeah. So she's basically telling me, you know, you gotta fucking suck it up. You're difficult. Okay. It's like in the back of my mind, I knew that wasn't good, that wasn't true, but I didn't have enough confidence to stand up for myself, and it just, there were so many things I was worried about. So many members of my family had drug problems. I didn't feel like I had anybody to really talk to. I couldn't talk to my grandmother about so many people. My grandmother was always telling me to drop them. Drop. She thought Kansas was trouble. She fucking really resented the fact that my dad and my stepmother moved to Kansas. She always took that so personally, and it was like, man, my stepmother had 3 daughters that lived there. It was never like, it wasn't a choice like that they made. It was an inevitable. It was going to happen eventually. So what she always took it so personally, and she said, it's nothing but trouble. It ruined everybody's life. She would say a lot of things about my family, and that was really, really, really hard, because even if she was correct about a few things, like, that's my family. That's my family. And I don't care. I don't fucking care what you've done for me. It doesn't mean you get to talk shit, mad, mad, mad shit on my family. And my mom wasn't in my life. And it was her daughter. And she would say things about my mom, and it was just like, that's my mother. But I would tell myself, okay, she loves her. It's her daughter. It's her daughter. She's allowed to. But it was hard for me to hear that. It was hard for me to hear her say things about my brother. But it was her grandson. She must love him, right? In her own way. Like, that's what I kept telling myself. And then it was just like, it was just too fucking much. And things were getting bad with my boyfriend. The house was always in. We finally got these. There was a leak. Okay, we got new pipes, so there was all these holes everywhere. Because everything that got done, it was just this power play, and it was a lot of finagling, and if I pissed her off, everything was paused, right? And it got to a point where I just couldn't take it anymore. Like, several times I just had to take a break, and she would get so mad, and she would say, you know, if you can't handle life, you should be committed. If you can't answer the fucking phone when I call, you should be committed. Like, what kind of person is that weak? I couldn't listen to the stuff about my family anymore. And I could never talk to her about what was going on with my family, because she already had such a hateful opinion of them. It was just really hard. It was so much. It was so much. Things started getting bad with my boyfriend, and she's telling me to suck it up, and she's telling me that I need to improve. I can't live there on my own. I can't afford it. And there's not a single room where I could take cute cat pictures, so to speak, without the background having a hole in the wall, or, you know, like, it was just like from these pipes that got replaced. And it was feeling so hopeless, man. And there were several times where my ex was like, okay, because the house was in my name, and he's like, put my name on the deed, and then I'll get loans and we'll do it ourselves. But he had no reason not to trust me. He really didn't. That motherfucker had no reason not to trust me. But he didn't, and he was just trying to be prudent. But anytime I was like, okay, that's what we're going to do, my grandmother would balk and, whoa, no, 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 don't do that, don't do that, don't you dare put his name on the deed. I've got the money, we'll do this. But then I'd piss her off again, and I'd piss her off by, again, not being able to listen to the that was my family, and maybe they had their problems, but it was still my family, and it was really hard to listen to her talk shit. We had a fight, and she told, both her and my ex-boyfriend, any secret that I ever told them, it's not a secret anymore. Very private things that, they just would get mad at me, and yep. But meanwhile, I'm trying to watch these YouTube videos on how to fucking, even, what you call it, crown molding, or no, making goddamn walls, right? Apparently that's so much harder than it looks, okay? But I had all these holes in my walls from this fucking, whatever, it doesn't matter. It was so fucking stressful, man. And things were getting worse with my ex. And then it finally came to a head to where I can't do it anymore. We had one particular fight that was just so, and I went to my grandmother and I thought, okay, she's going to agree. She's going to agree. Like this, I can't, He crossed the line, I thought, right? It doesn't matter if she's born in a different time, he crossed the line. She'll understand. But I went to her and she was like, Amber, you're going to have to lose weight and cook more. You can't afford to live there on your own. You've got to make him happy. If you make him happy, if he's happy, he won't hurt you. So I was just a fucking zombie after that. Okay, I felt goddamn motherfucking trapped. I couldn't leave. Couldn't make him leave because I couldn't afford it on my own, right? And there were a few times where I tried to make him leave anyway. That clearly didn't work. What was I going to do? He stopped paying the property taxes and the HOA fee until I would put the deed in his name. And, this motherfucker, he had no reason not to trust me, right? I just can't say that enough. I'd never done anything to where he couldn't trust me. I would have to just assume at this point it was his own intentions, his own internal thought process that made him suspicious of me because he had those feelings himself. I don't know. But the last few months before the flood, I was like a zombie. I was straight up like a fucking zombie. I was trapped, and I knew it. I couldn't keep my mouth shut. I couldn't mind my own business. I kept tattletaling. That's what he called it. I didn't know what was wrong with him, but he was losing so much weight. He ended up losing his job. He had lost friends, okay? Like, there was something wrong with him. I thought, I had focused too much on my friends because they always came first. So I tried to focus on him. I had lost some shitty friendships that were really, they were stressful, right? And I'm sure that made me bring the stress home, right? But, there was just some crazy shit. I have a good reason for wanting to be very careful the kind of friends I have in my life. Please understand that. I've had some really stupid situations that, but there were a lot of things. Like, did I bring this on myself? Was I acting out because I had these fights with my friends over this thing? And, like, my whole family's addicted to drugs. My grandmother stresses me out. Am I making his life harder? Is it me? But yeah. So then, I don't know, just the last 2 years living there, it was like, that's when things had started getting scary with him. But there, at the end, it didn't fucking matter. I couldn't hang in there anymore, but I had no choice because I went to my grandmother and she made it very clear that. And then the flood happened. The flood happened. couple months prior, I had lost my baby. Um, Sometimes I think about my miscarriage, and I think about that degrading fight that I just couldn't get over, and how I called my grandmother, and she's like, sometimes I think that if she had just fucking helped me, I wouldn't have ended up pregnant. Because shit happens when you live with somebody. Imagine that. I wouldn't have been pregnant. I wouldn't have lost my baby. It could have been avoided. And then the flood. Anyway, that's the story of my grandmother buying me a house.